If I can get a big round of applause for Jeff from Kira Talent, that was really insightful. And because you all have beers, I'd like you all to pick one up and cheers the person next to you. These are from Steamwhistle, as you might be able to tell, the green bottles with the packaging Steamwhistle. And we did not pay Jeff to actually refer to them in his demo. They do one thing really well, and that's brew a great Pilsner right in the heart of downtown Toronto. They didn't actually pay me to say that either. They actually, they're just really well branded. But no, for those of you that have never been here before, because I know there's a bunch of fresh faces, you are in what is called RHINO 2. This is the second room of the bigger vision, which is called Project RHINO, which is a co-working space right in the heart of downtown Toronto. We started as one little tech startup and a film production company, the same people filming this today. And some people got word of that and said, hey, I want to work in that space too. And we grew from having one room to 2 rooms. So if anyone actually is looking, we don't advertise this a lot, but if you are looking for desk space, we're more than happy to, as long as you have passion and a vision of where you want to go and can pay rent, we're more than happy. We're more than happy to have you come work aside us. But so for the second half of tonight, we have assembled an expert panel of people that are early employees at some exploding startups with growth, here in Toronto. Have people heard of 500 pixels? Yes? Have people heard of 500 pixels? Yeah! And has anyone heard of Achievers? Yeah! Okay, I actually wasn't expecting much there, but they are, as their Facebook page says, formerly I Love Rewards. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Dustin and then Zach, and they're going to talk about quickly what their companies do. Dustin.
Hey, I'm VP of Business Development over at 500px. We're a photo sharing platform and community, currently a few million members, hosting tens of millions of photos. We've been called the Flickr Killer. I kind of like that one. We've been called a lot of things, but I like the rapid growth. I like being called, rapidly growing. That's cool. So yeah, that's me.
All right. So to kind of give you a 50,000-foot view of what Achievers works, if you go to our website, the fluffy HR sell to 45-year-old HR women phrase is to change the way the world works. But for you people that want the kind of tangible technical explanation, what we do is build online rewards and recognition programs. That's how we started out. So the most common use case is a company comes to us. They want to drive some sort of behavior, so they use our SaaS platform to give out points to their employees, whether it's for referring another employee, hitting their goals, recognizing each other, coming up with bright ideas, and the employees then accumulate those points online and redeem them for great products like iPods, Coach purses, etc. Now it's kind of transforming into more of a HR talent management tool where companies are gaining a lot of data through these recognitions and harnessing that to kind of get the analytics they need. So that's the premise of the platform.
So these startups are pretty well known today within the Toronto tech community. But when these guys joined, they weren't so well known. I'd say you guys probably took a big risk to join. And I'm wondering why you did that and what you were doing before and how you were attracted to the company. So Zach, tell me a bit about yourself, where you came from, and how you got involved.
So I've been around at Achievers for about 6.5 years now. So the honest answer is I was looking for a job, and I got a little lucky. I was graduating from school, and I was looking for a place to work, and I had a couple interviews at bigger companies. I did a degree in computer engineering, and I was looking for something in hardware, actually. And I landed at this small little software company, introduced through a friend of a friend, walked in, saw the culture, saw how passionate everybody was, and went through the interview process and started and never looked back. So that's where I came from, and that's when I started. We were small, about 25 people. I was getting paid next to nothing, but the culture was there and the experience was there, and here we are today, 6.5 years later, 200 employees.
So I guess my story starts in 2009 and cold, stormy night in Winnipeg. I joined a startup. Yeah, except for that one night in July. I joined a startup in Winnipeg back in 2009, and I moved to Winnipeg. I moved from Winnipeg to Toronto about 6 months after joining them to drive the Canadian market. I shared office space with the founders of 500px when I first got to Toronto. We just developed a great relationship. Nothing official, just good friends with Oleg and Evgeny and the guys over there. And that always developed to the point where we always felt that when the project I was working on sort of wrapped up, I would always sort of be there. I think we both kind of felt it. The company I was working for, the startup based out of Winnipeg, was acquired in 2011 by a company out of Boston. I moved down to Texas and then over to San Francisco for a while to drive the new business and the whole integration thing there. And I woke up one day in San Francisco and got on the BART and went down to my cubicle in corporate America, and I got an incredibly depressed feeling, and I called Oleg and I said, maybe it's time that I move over there now. I think I'm ready now. And he said, well, come on up. I flew over to. He was in New York the next week, so I flew over there in a 24-hour trip back and forth. Sat down with him and Evgeny and said, I think I'm ready to do this. And they said, come over. So made the long road trip back from San Francisco to Toronto and came on board and joined them. And that was this summer, so certainly wasn't there from the beginning, but I think we've doubled in size since I joined and took a hefty pay cut to come over to 500px. But the passion is certainly worth the trade-off for what I'm doing now. So I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm very, very happy there.
So you touched on something, culture.
Yes.
Tell me about the culture of where you work.
Sure. So we try to bring as many people as we can into our office because we feel our culture is unique. And you hear a lot of companies talk about corporate culture. Everybody thinks they've figured it out, and I'm no different. I think we have figured it out. If you kind of walk into our office, you'll notice, I think we have 6 core values, but I think one that really stands out is transparency. We're extremely transparent about our business, and that was from the get-go. Everybody knows the financial statements. They're shared with everybody. We have sessions on a quarterly basis where people can talk to the leadership group and ask any questions they want. We actually have a daily company-wide meeting at 11:51 to noon every single day. Music plays in the center of the office, and the entire office congregates in the center. This happens in all 3, San Francisco, Boston, and Toronto. It's been happening every single day for the last 7 years. So quirky things like this have been happening at our company, but it's kind of ingrained in our social fabric. So fostering elements of transparency, I would say, I can go on forever, but I think that's the kind of the crux of it.
I think in a lot of other jobs you have an idea of what you're going to do from day to day. And I love the idea of going to work and sitting down sometimes for 2 or 3 hours and just figuring out how to attack a problem or what should we do. There's no book that's ever been written on how to take over the photo sharing market. And if there is, I'd love to read it, but I don't think there is one. So a lot of times the approaches and when you're strapped for people and it's always an issue of do we have the bandwidth to take on projects to sit down and say what's the best use of our time? How do we attack this problem? Do we push the PR now, or do we go after developing a product that's going to generate a new revenue stream? Those type of questions are not the questions most people are faced with. I think that show up at a job that they get to at 9:30 and they get to leave at 5. There's a certain level of accountability that you have when you work at a startup. It's on you to make it succeed. It's not on anybody else. There's no shirking the blame when you're the only non-technical guy there that's been hired to drive the business. There isn't anybody else I can pawn it off on, and and I really love that. I mean, that's great. I wouldn't have it any other way.
That was actually a great segue to my next question. I've been to both of your websites and your jobs/career opportunities section. It's very how you word them very differently. You're hiring people. Yes. How big are you getting? How fast are you growing? Where do you see yourselves in 1 year? What's your headcount today? What's your headcount in a year? Dustin.
I think we're at 35 now. We've doubled since I started, and we're looking to double again in the next 6 months. And I think we could easily be at, if it's possible, if we could source the people, I think we'd like to be at 80, 100 by the end of next year. I mean, that's if the market can produce these people. I think we could get there.
Yeah, so we're at 200 employees now across Boston, San Francisco, and Toronto. The headquarters is Toronto, so we have about 130, 140. It's changing every day, I don't know, in our Toronto office. But we're hiring approximately 90 people over the next 12 months. So that's across most offices, across all offices, but mostly in Toronto. So we've been lucky enough to get into bed with some awesome VCs, most recently Sequoia, and they hold a very high bar as far as the growth and the rate of growth for our companies. So they believe we can be a $1 billion business a few years from now. Obviously, IPO is in our path, and that's where we want to get to. But I would say somewhere next year around this time, we're high 200s, close to 300 people. Majority of employees still in the Toronto office, but next biggest in San Francisco, which is kind of our marketing and sales head, followed by remote sales office in Boston.
And I've actually been to the Achievers office in San Francisco. It's pretty empty. They need some employees, so people apply. Although apparently it just opened, so that's their defense, was Zach opened that office, and I happened to be there a week later. Okay, so you both want to hire people. What are you looking for in people? What can people do to stand out? Any tips you can share with that, Dustin?
First of all, I guess be really smart. That's critical. The second thing is we're at a size of a company right now where nobody's going to be able to hold himself up in the corner and just work on projects. You can't be somebody that says, just don't bug me, just let me do it, and I'll work. That's not going to work at a company like ours. You're going to have to know how to work with people, and you're going to have to accept that something that you've been working on for 2 or 3 weeks and you're really into it, and it's what you're doing. That might not be what you're doing tomorrow for just a couple of days while we do something else. You're going to have to be okay with those shifts. It's not going to be a place where you can just sort of sit in the background. You're going to be asked to take on responsibility, and that I think has to come through in your personality. We do multiple rounds of interviews because that personality is so critical to us. I mean, if you're incredible at what you do, if you're the best engineer in town, and you come in and we don't think you're a fit, we're not going to hire you. And that might sound harsh again, but that's that's the way it is when you're in a small room and you're sitting with a bunch of people and there's so much collaboration that has to go on. You have to work with the team. So if you are somebody that struggles with interpersonal relationships, I would say get out there and mingle. Get out there and work on those soft skills. Nobody seems to do that enough these days. Get out there and actually talk to people face to face and figure out who you are and what you can bring to the team as a person.
Cool. So I agree with you completely. People are everything. More so at the smaller stage than the greater stage. I've seen, 1 or 2 extremely negative, pessimistic people take down the culture of an entire company to the point where it's costing the company a significant amount of money and productivity. If you are not careful in terms of the people that you hire, it's so easy to waver, right? I spend a lot of my time interviewing now, and it's like on paper the person's great, and you're in the interview, my recruiter constantly asks me, like, can you work with this person? Do you see yourself actually interacting with this person day to day? And it's hard because the only true measure of performance is performance, and you want to give people a chance, and on paper they look good, and you want to hit your numbers in terms of hiring, but you have to maintain a really high bar. So I would say in terms of, when I'm going through my interview run, I mostly interview developers and hire developers nowadays. We still have special projects roles and coordinator roles across the company where people are acting more as generalists, but within the development world, what I'm looking for is people that are self-aware, that understand what they do better than everybody else, that can talk confidently about the skills that they have, are open-minded, and understand the chaos that ensues within a fast-growth company, and that are just passionate about what they do. And I think, if they pass the technical bar and they have that, then I'm pretty open, and we're hiring a significant amount of people. So if you're interested, reach out to me. But that's basically it. I think they just, that self-awareness and understanding at this stage now, we're at that specialist stage. So understanding what that person brings to the table and what they can do better than anybody else that's currently in the company, even if it is something small, goes a long way.
Yeah, so anyone looking for a job, if you need to, these people could put in a good word if you're obviously smart. And of course, only through a Kira interview. But yeah, last question, guys. You've joined your companies pretty early. I know the best is yet to come, but what has been the most surprising part about being part of your organization? Where you started and where you guys are today? Like, was there anything that was not expected? Any bumps in the road or surprises?
So I'm surprised I'm still here, to be completely honest. So I think, when I first started the company, I had no mindset about what I was trying to do, and I wasn't coming out of school saying I want to work for a growth company and I want to go through this whole rounds of financing thing. I had no idea what a startup was. So when our first VC kind of signed on, and the plan at that point, according to our CFO, was grow the company to like a $100 million valuation one day, and we'll just flip the company. And then all of a sudden that changed into, no, we can go so much further than that. And then it just kept getting bigger and bigger. And we have an annual retreat every single year in October, and every single October we go all sit in that room up in Collingwood, and our CFO gets up in front of us and says, hey, this is our projection for next year. This many people, this much revenue, and everybody's like, oh, you're crazy. That's not going to happen. And every year it happens. So constantly surprising yourself. And then the fact that I'm still excited about stuff day to day, 6.5 years later, the fact that an environment can change so much and keep you on your toes is incredible. And I wouldn't trade that for anything.
This is a tough question for me for some reason. I don't know what I was expecting. I knew what I didn't like, and I knew that 500px was probably going to be the opposite of that, and it has been. What surprised me in time there? The passion people have for what you're doing is often surprising. The fact that people put time and energy into telling you how they really feel about your product, negative or positive, surprised me. How we've begun. I guess it surprised me how quickly things can change. Last week or 2 weeks ago, we launched a new iPhone app, and you should download it. But it was 2 weeks ago Wednesday we launched it, and it was we were the cock of the walk. It was a big deal. It was 500px launches a amazing photo sharing application, the must-have app of the season. And you ride that wave, and then today Flickr launches their app, or they relaunch their app, and it's like Flickr's back. Look out, world. And all of a sudden, it's the highs and the lows are certainly there. When you're this emotionally invested in something, they certainly seem higher and lower. What surprised me is that didn't surprise me, the fact that they'd be high and low. What surprised me a lot was the way people talk about the company, how it swings so quickly. In a matter of 14 days, it's you're the best. No, wait, they're the best. Instagram's dumb. No, Twitter's dumb. That's been the story the last 5 days. I can't believe how much inconsistency there is in people when they sometimes talk about the company, and how people's minds or the perception of the company shifts so quickly, or at least their perceived perception. But nonetheless, I guess that's what surprised me the most is how it's from the inside it looks like slow, gradual growth. From the outside, it just looks like absolute chaos. Who knows? They're up this week, they're down this week, and the inside, nothing's changed. So I guess that kind of surprised me is the difference between what people think goes on and what actually goes on. So,
can I touch on that one more? So yeah, I just completely agree that change is, to add on to it, is the number one thing. The fact that work.com releases and all of a sudden, oh my God, Salesforce is competing with us. We're all going to run this way, and then we're going to change our business model to software seats, and we're going to do this. And like the fact that we're this far in and we're still making these giant decisions day to day is crazy. So yeah, the rate of change still surprised me.
I can testify to that. There are some days when we walk in here and our strategy with Connect.me is like all up in question, but then we realize, we go back to our metrics and people are using our product, people love it. It's just our perception of what we think is happening is different. But anyway, if you can all give me a big round of applause for our panel.